Izzy Rodas, a 13-year-old girl from Stockholm, Sweden, vanished from her bed on a quiet autumn night in 1992. Her disappearance left her family devastated and the community in shock. Despite exhaustive search efforts and growing media coverage, no lead surfaced and the case grew cold. For 9 years, Elaine, Izzy's mother, battled through grief, clinging to the hope that her daughter was still alive. But the discovery of an old cassette recorder would lead her to uncover a dark and twisted secret about her ex-husband, Charles, and the horrific fate that had befallen her daughter. The chilling truth would not only expose the hidden life of a young girl but also unravel the disturbing actions of a father who had kept his daughter captive for nearly a decade. Welcome to the Tangible Stories channel, where we dive deep into the most chilling and thought-provoking true crime stories. If you're here because you care about uncovering the truth and seeking justice, then subscribing is the least you can do. How could you not hit that subscribe button after hearing this? Don't let this story slip through the cracks. If you're not subscribing, then tell us why in the comments below. Because every second counts and this story deserves to be heard by those who truly care. And while you're at it, let us know where you're watching from. Your support helps us keep bringing these stories to light. This is the story of Elaine, a mother whose world was torn apart when her 13-year-old daughter, Izzy, vanished without a trace from their home in Stockholm, Sweden, on a quiet autumn night in 1992. The silence in their home became deafening, and the weight of uncertainty and grief settled over her like a suffocating blanket. Elaine, unable to shake the sense that her daughter was still out there, never stopped hoping. 9 years passed in torment, her life marked by the haunting memory of that empty bed. Throughout it all, her ex-husband Charles had remained distant, seemingly retreating into his own world, leaving Elaine to carry the unbearable burden of loss alone. But in 2001, when Elaine makes an unexpected discovery, everything she thought she knew about her family, and the truth of Izzy's disappearance, will be shattered. What she uncovers will expose a twisted nightmare that no one could have ever imagined. Years passed, but Elaine's search never truly stopped. In 2001, she had settled into a new life, though every corner of her existence felt incomplete without Izzy. Her days were consumed by work, the routines of living, but her nights were filled with memories of her daughter. It was on one of those nights, as Elaine unpacked yet another box in her modest apartment, that she found it, a small old cassette recorder. A relic from Izzy's childhood, once a cherished toy, now forgotten in the mess of life that had moved on without her. Elaine's fingers lingered on the recorder. She hadn't thought about it in years. It had been tucked away in a box with a few of Izzy's favorite things, packed away during the divorce, perhaps too painful to open. But now, with a sense of quiet curiosity, she turned the recorder over in her hands. Was it possible that pressing play could bring her closer to Izzy's disappearance? Could it unlock something she had missed in all these years of searching? Elaine's heart pounded as she pushed the button. The static buzzed before a faint, distant voice emerged. Izzy's voice. Elaine froze. At first it was as though no time had passed. Izzy sounded like the girl Elaine remembered, the little girl who loved her stuffed animals and had a laugh that could light up a room. But as the tape played on, something started to shift. The voice became different, more deliberate, uneasy. The background noise was strange, almost as if Izzy was speaking into the recorder in a place that didn't belong to her childhood home. Then came the moment that would change everything. Elaine's breath caught in her throat as a new voice joined the recording. A voice she hadn't heard in years, the voice of Charles, her ex-husband. But the words, the tone were off. There was a coldness there that Elaine hadn't remembered. Izzy, come to the princess room when you're done. Remember what I promised. The phrase hit Elaine like a punch to the stomach. Princess room? She had never heard those words before. What was this place? Why was Izzy being called to it? And why hadn't Charles ever mentioned it? The nagging feeling grew in her chest, a sinking realization that she had stumbled onto something far darker than she had ever anticipated. The simple act of pressing play had led her to the first clue, the first crack in the facade of her ex-husband's life that would eventually shatter everything she thought she knew. Elaine rewound the tape, her hands trembling. Could this really be the key? Was there something hidden in those words? Or was it just a childish game, a harmless interaction that had somehow become twisted over time? But Elaine knew one thing for certain now: she couldn't stop. She was getting closer. And with every new clue, the walls around her began to fall, revealing a truth darker than she had ever imagined. Elaine's heart raced as the faint, familiar voice of Izzy crackled through the cassette recorder. It was a sound she hadn't heard in 9 years, a sound that felt like a glimpse into the past, a time before everything had been shattered. For a moment, Elaine closed her eyes, allowing the warmth of her daughter's voice to wash over her. Izzy was speaking about a simple day, her friends at preschool, the butterflies in the garden, the toys she'd played with. It was a scene of innocence, of childhood. But then, without warning, the tone shifted. There was something strange in the background now. A shift in the atmosphere. The conversation no longer felt like the happy chatter of a little girl. It felt rehearsed, uncomfortable. A faint rustling noise followed, like someone had moved closer to the recorder, speaking just outside its reach. Then came a voice that immediately made Elaine's blood run cold. It was Charles, her ex-husband. His voice sounded off, calm but too calm. "Izzy, come to the princess room when you're done. Remember what I promised." Elaine's breath caught in her throat. The words hung in the air like a weight that she couldn't shake. The princess room. She replayed the phrase in her mind, trying to make sense of it. Had she misheard? Was it some innocent nickname for Izzy's bedroom? But the way Charles had said it, the way he had emphasized it, it didn't sit right. It felt wrong, too wrong. Elaine's hands trembled as she rewound the tape, the sound of the tape whirring filling the silence in the room. As the recorder clicked to life again, she listened closely, straining to catch every detail, hoping for some small comfort that would make sense of this madness. But there was nothing comforting about what came next. The conversation continued, this time with more clarity, though the unsettling tone lingered. "Izzy, it's time for your reward. You know what comes next." Elaine froze. The words felt like a gut punch. Reward? What was he talking about? And why was Izzy being called to this strange room, this princess room? What reward could possibly be so important to make a 13-year-old girl do something like that? The chill that ran down Elaine's spine deepened. She wasn't just hearing a casual conversation anymore. She was hearing a terrible secret, something buried in the deepest recesses of Charles's life. Something Elaine had never even suspected. She pressed play again, each word sinking her deeper into a void of uncertainty and fear. Charles's voice filled the room once more, this time softer, almost coaxing. "You've been such a good girl, Izzy. Now it's time for you to be a princess." Elaine's mind raced. What had Charles done? Why was Izzy being made to play along with this twisted game? The fragments of the conversation were like shards of glass, sharp, jagged, and impossible to ignore. Every piece she uncovered only seemed to lead her further away from the reality she'd clung to for years. This wasn't just a missing child. This was something much darker. Elaine rewound the tape again, but this time she knew she wasn't just looking for answers. She was chasing something that had been hidden from her for 9 years. Something that would turn her whole life upside down. The air in Stockholm was thick with the weight of memories as Elaine stood in front of her old home, the place that had once been a sanctuary, now a haunting reminder of everything she'd lost. As she approached the front door, she felt an eerie sense of familiarity, but there was something else too, something unspoken, something that lingered in the air like an ominous presence. Elaine had never returned to this house since she left, unable to bear the pain of the memories. But today something was different. The discovery of the cassette recorder had set her on a path she couldn't ignore. She had to know the truth. She had to face whatever had been hidden away in the dark corners of her past. As she stepped inside, the house felt colder than she remembered, the silence unsettling. The floors creaked beneath her feet as she made her way through the rooms, each one filled with the ghosts of her former life. She paused in the hallway, the faint sound of her footsteps the only noise in the stillness. It was as if the house was holding its breath, waiting for Elaine to uncover the truth. Her heart pounded in her chest as she descended into the basement, her destination. The basement, once a place where Charles would retreat to work on projects, now felt like a tomb. The heavy air down there was suffocating, as though it had been sealed off from the world for far too long. Elaine's hands shook as she reached for the light switch, the dim bulb flickering to life, casting long shadows across the room. She moved cautiously, scanning the shelves lined with tools and old boxes. At first glance, it appeared like any ordinary basement, a storage space for forgotten things. But Elaine could feel it, the unsettling sensation that something was wrong, that something dark was buried beneath the surface of this seemingly mundane space. Her gaze fell on a stack of old crates in the corner, dust settling over them as if they hadn't been disturbed in years. She hesitated for a moment before walking toward them, her footsteps slow, deliberate. She felt a deep sense of foreboding, the kind of feeling that told her she wasn't about to find the closure she was looking for, she was about to stumble upon something far worse. Elaine's hand trembled as she reached for the top crate. With a soft groan, it shifted, revealing a hidden compartment underneath. The sight of it sent a chill down her spine. She crouched down and pried it open, her fingers brushing against something cold. Inside, she found stacks of old videotapes, some of them neatly labeled with dates and titles that made her stomach turn. There was no mistaking it, these weren't just family videos. These were something else entirely. As Elaine pulled one of the tapes from the box, her heart sank. The label was simple, Princess Room Volume 1. The words felt like they were carved into her mind, etched with an unease she couldn't shake. She grabbed another tape, then another, each one labeled the same way. Then from behind her, Elaine heard something that made her freeze, a soft thud followed by a low creak. She spun around, her breath catching in her throat. Was she alone? Or had someone been watching her this entire time? The basement door creaked open slightly, but no one was there. The air felt heavier now, as though something was about to snap. Elaine turned back to the tapes, a surge of dread washing over her. What had Charles been hiding all this time? What was he trying to erase from the world and from her? The tapes seemed to whisper the answers she'd been avoiding for so long. The truth was staring her in the face, and yet she couldn't bring herself to press play, not yet. But she knew she would. There was no turning back now. She had come this far. And whatever lay on these tapes, whatever secret Charles had been protecting, would unravel the darkness that had kept her and Izzy apart for nearly a decade. Elaine's mind raced as she stared at the boxes of tapes, her hands trembling with the weight of what she had just uncovered. The room, once so familiar, now felt like a prison, a place filled with lies and unspeakable secrets. She couldn't shake the cold dread gnawing at her chest. These tapes, these hidden clues, had been buried for far too long. She wasn't equipped to handle this on her own. The truth, whatever it was, had to come to light. Without hesitation, Elaine grabbed her phone and dialed the police. The moment the dispatcher answered, she knew her life was about to change forever. "I need to report something," Elaine's voice cracked. "It's about my daughter and my ex-husband. I think I've found something." We want to take a moment to thank all of you for sticking with us through this emotional journey. Your support means the world to us. If you're finding value in this story and want to keep uncovering more mysteries with us, please hit that subscribe button. Don't miss out on the rest of the story. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love to hear from you. Tell us why in the comments below. Your feedback matters and we're all in this together. Thank you for being a part of the Tangible Stories channel. The hours that followed were a blur of officers, questions, and unsettling silence. Elaine watched as the authorities took her findings, the tapes, the hidden compartment, and began to piece together the fragments of a terrifying puzzle. She stayed by their side, a silent observer to the unfolding investigation. Each moment felt like an eternity, the weight of what she had discovered sinking deeper into her bones. As the police combed through the house, the air in the room grew thick with anticipation. Then the breakthrough came. One of the officers, a young detective named Anders, called out from the hallway. "We found something. You need to see this." Elaine's heart skipped a beat as she followed him to the back of the house, her footsteps echoing in the cold silence. There, behind a false wall, lay a hidden door, one Elaine had never seen before. The door was old, its edges worn from years of neglect. The officers pried it open slowly, the sound of metal scraping against wood reverberating through the air. What they found beyond it would shake them to their core. Inside the room, the walls were lined with old furniture, toys, and strange decorations, much like a child's room but eerily out of place. The dim light cast long shadows across the floor, making the room feel suffocating. A single bed, small and tucked away in the corner, stood as the centerpiece. It wasn't the kind of room a child would choose to stay in. The air felt heavy, thick with the sense that something had been wrong for a very long time. Elaine's legs nearly buckled as she stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room, trying to process what she was seeing. She hadn't expected this. Nothing could have prepared her for the sight that greeted her. There were no photos, no signs of a child's life or laughter. Only remnants of Izzy's childhood, left to rot in a room that had been hidden from the world. And yet there was no sign of Izzy. Where had she been all this time? The officers gathered around, their faces grim. "We'll need to take this in for evidence," Detective Anders said, his voice low and steady, though his eyes betrayed the shock he felt. "But this is just the beginning." Elaine's breath caught in her throat. This room wasn't just a part of the house. It was a cage. A place where her daughter had been kept hidden for years. But the most pressing question remained: where had Izzy been all this time? What had Charles done to her? Elaine stood frozen in the doorway, her mind racing through 1,000 possibilities. The police were here now. The investigation was underway. But the answers, the truth, were still buried, deep within the walls of this house, locked away behind years of lies and manipulation. And Elaine knew, as the sound of footsteps echoed behind her, that the worst was yet to come. Elaine stood at the threshold of the hidden room, her breath caught in her throat. The weight of the years, 9 years of wondering, searching, and living with the unbearable unknown, pressed down on her chest. Every part of her wanted to run, to flee from what lay beyond that door. But she couldn't. She had come too far, and the truth was now within reach. The room was silent except for the sound of her own shaky breathing as she stepped inside. And there, in the dim light, she saw her, Izzy, now 22. Her daughter. The girl she thought she had lost forever. But this wasn't the Izzy Elaine remembered. Gone was the bright, curious young woman she had last seen. A young girl who loved to chase butterflies in the garden. Gone were the days of innocent laughter and carefree moments. The woman standing before Elaine was a shadow of the child she had once known. A 22-year-old woman with wide, haunted eyes that seemed to carry the weight of a lifetime. Elaine's heart shattered in an instant. The woman she had desperately searched for was here, but she was not the same. Izzy's hair was tangled and unkempt, her clothes ragged and ill-fitting. She stood stiffly, her body frozen in place as though she had forgotten how to move freely, how to interact with the world beyond the confines of this room. "Izzy," Elaine whispered, her voice breaking barely a sound. She reached out, her hands trembling, but she hesitated, unsure if she could ever truly touch the daughter she had once known. What had happened to her? What had Charles done to her? Izzy didn't move. She simply stared at Elaine, her eyes wide and filled with confusion, her expression distant, like someone trapped in a world they no longer understood. A world of isolation, manipulation, and years of confinement that had slowly erased everything Elaine once knew about her daughter. "Izzy, it's me, it's Mom," Elaine choked out, her voice cracking with the weight of the years. "I've been looking for you. I never gave up. You're safe now, baby. You're finally safe." But Izzy didn't respond. She didn't even blink. It was as if the years of being locked away, told that the world had ended, had completely shattered her ability to recognize the mother who had once been everything to her. Elaine felt a deep ache in her chest, a pain that was sharper than anything she'd ever known. Elaine stepped forward again, reaching for her daughter's trembling hand. This time Izzy didn't pull away. Instead, she allowed Elaine to hold her, but there was no warmth in the touch, no recognition. Just a cold, distant acceptance. Elaine's heart broke again, and this time it felt permanent. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," Elaine whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I should have found you sooner. I should have never let you be taken away from me." The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the sound of Elaine's ragged breaths and Izzy's quiet, labored ones. Elaine could feel the emotional toll of those 9 long years weighing heavily on her daughter. And in the pit of her stomach, she felt a growing horror, the realization that Charles's manipulation had been so much deeper, more insidious, than she had ever imagined. "He told me? He told me you were dead," Izzy finally whispered, her voice so soft, so broken, that it barely reached Elaine's ears. "He said you were never coming back. That it was just me and him. We were the only ones left." Elaine's eyes widened, the gravity of Izzy's words hitting her like a freight train. "He told you that?" Elaine asked, her voice shaking. "He told you I was dead?" Izzy nodded slowly, her face blank, as if the truth had been so ingrained in her over the years that it no longer seemed strange. She had believed the lie. She had lived it. The realization crashed over Elaine. Charles had isolated Izzy, systematically manipulating her, erasing any hope of escape, turning her into a captive in a world that existed only for him. The horror of it gripped her heart. How long had this been going on? How much of her daughter had been lost in the process? Elaine pulled Izzy into her arms, not caring that she felt like a stranger in her own child's embrace. She kissed her daughter's forehead, holding her tight as though somehow, just maybe, she could undo the years of pain and torment that had stolen Izzy's childhood. But as she held her, the full weight of what her daughter had endured sank in. It wasn't just the years of confinement or the manipulation. It was the lost innocence, the childhood that had been stolen, erased by the dark influence of a man she had once loved and trusted. The damage was done, and it ran deeper than Elaine had ever imagined. The reunion, however bittersweet, had finally given Elaine the one thing she had longed for. Her daughter was alive. But the road to healing would not be easy. And as Elaine held Izzy, she knew this was only the beginning of a journey to rebuild a broken soul, piece by shattered piece. The truth about Charles's actions had finally come to light. His manipulation, his twisted control over Izzy, the years of confinement, the lie he had built around their lives. His arrest was just the beginning, the start of a long road to justice. But for Elaine and Izzy, justice would never erase the scars of what they had endured. The truth had shattered their world, but now they were left to rebuild it, piece by piece, and that process would be anything but easy. In the weeks that followed, Elaine couldn't escape the haunting images of the life Izzy had lived. Locked away in that hidden room, told that the world outside had ended, that everyone was gone. That she was all alone except for Charles. The trauma Izzy carried wasn't just physical. It was deep, something that no amount of time or words could easily heal. It was the emotional toll of being told she had no one to turn to, and no one who cared. For Izzy, the process of recovery was slow. She couldn't just pick up where she had left off. No one could. At 22, she was still a child in many ways, emotionally and mentally scarred by the life she had been forced to live. The memories of the isolation, the lies, the manipulation, they haunted her, and no one could fully understand the weight of what she had gone through, not even Elaine. But Elaine knew one thing: they would face this journey together. It wasn't easy for Elaine either. The guilt she carried, the moments when she questioned why she didn't see the signs sooner, why she couldn't have found Izzy earlier, plagued her every day. But as she watched Izzy begin to heal bit by bit, Elaine found a small sense of peace, realizing that she had done everything in her power to bring her daughter back, even if it had taken 9 long years. It wasn't perfect, but they were here together, and that was the start. The first few months were a whirlwind: counseling sessions, visits from family services, and endless paperwork as they navigated the system. But beyond all of that, there was love and support, and the quiet understanding between mother and daughter. Elaine would wake up every morning, her arms still heavy with the weight of the past, but with Izzy beside her, there was a new kind of hope. Hope that they could rebuild their lives, slowly, steadily. But the process wasn't without its setbacks. Izzy would have moments of panic, of confusion, of anger. She would lash out, wanting to push Elaine away, terrified of letting her in. Elaine's heart would break in those moments, but she knew that healing couldn't be rushed. There was no blueprint for this kind of recovery. It was a day-by-day, hour-by-hour process. And through it all, Charles was in jail, his life unraveling as the full extent of his crimes was exposed. His trial would be long and public, a constant reminder of the nightmare he had created. But for Elaine and Izzy, the focus was no longer on him. The court cases and legal battles would continue, but their future lay in the quiet spaces between them. The moments when Elaine held Izzy's hand, when Izzy laughed for the first time in months, when they talked about the things they had missed while being apart. The mother-daughter bond was beginning to rebuild, stronger than ever. In the end, the journey would never be easy. There would be days when the weight of their past would feel too heavy to bear, when the trauma of those 9 years would resurface and threaten to consume them again. But Elaine and Izzy had something now that neither of them had ever had before: a chance. A chance at healing, a chance at recovery, and a future built on the strength they found in each other. As the years went by, Elaine watched Izzy grow stronger, wiser, more in control of her own life. It wasn't a perfect path, but it was theirs. They were no longer prisoners of the past. They were survivors, healing step by step together. And that was the greatest gift they could give each other. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of truth and healing. If you found this story moving, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another powerful story. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the impact of Elaine and Izzy's reunion? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know what stories you'd like to see next. Your support helps us continue to bring these important stories to light. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep exploring the untold truths with the Tangible Stories channel.